Good evening, friends. This is Pastor Stephanie from the Gathering at Scott Memorial, and tonight we're going to continue to look at forgiveness. Some announcements. We've got a paint night coming up. We have a end of summer wonderful evening coming up in the end of August. And check your emails because I know I'm forgetting other things. So, we are continuing to look at forgiveness, and I feel like the most convicting one for me comes from Matthew chapter 6. So right after Jesus has taught the disciples the Lord's Prayer, he tells them this, that we find in verse 14. For if you forgive others their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. So as a pastor, I often feel the need to go into the context and what exactly that meant for the people of that day. But for this passage, I really feel like it's pretty straightforward. Jesus makes it really clear. We will be forgiven the same amount that we forgive others, which is a hard thing because sometimes people have wronged us in really hard ways, and we really don't want to forgive. But it's made clear to us by Jesus that we will be forgiven the same amount that we forgive others. Now, thankfully, Christ came into the world to live among us. Christ was betrayed. Christ was bullied. Christ was mocked. So he knows what it's like to live here on earth. And he knows that it's hard, right? It's hard to live. As I said last week, I feel like if you're more than 2 years old, someone has stolen taken your toy from you or treated you poorly, at least in your mind. So from a very young age, we feel like we've been wronged. And Jesus, he experienced that along with us. So tonight we're going to be looking at another one of the awesome Old Testament stories. So I know I love the Old Testament, but just a reminder that for Jesus and the disciples and all of the Jewish followers that were listening to Jesus, they knew these books. They knew these stories so well. So all the Jewish boys and girls went to Hebrew school, and they learned they memorized the first 5 books of the Bible. So that's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. All of the Hebrew boys and girls knew this by age like 10, 11. So these stories, when Jesus is talking about forgiveness, these stories were what they were thinking of. So we're going to look at the story of Jacob and Esau. Now, to give you a little background, we got Abraham, Father Abraham, who had 2 sons. He had Ishmael by Hagar, an Egyptian slave, and then Isaac. He and his wife Sarah were finally able to conceive, and they had their son Isaac. Now, so much forgiveness was needed in that family. If you want a real nail-biter story, read Genesis chapter 22, when Abraham takes Isaac up to a mountain. Our Jewish brothers and sisters call this the binding of Isaac. Again, we're not going to talk about that tonight because that's a whole different sermon. So Isaac, his son with Sarah, marries Rebecca, and she becomes pregnant with twins. And so even before she's born, the Lord said to her, 2 nations, this is from Genesis 25, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples born of you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other. The elder shall serve the younger. When her time to give birth was at hand, there were twins in her womb. The first came out red, all his body like a hairy mantle, and they named him Esau. Afterwards, his brother came out with his hand gripping Esau's heel, so he was named Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. When the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, while Jacob was a quiet man living in tents. Isaac loved Esau because he was fond of game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Another instance where it's not great when your kids know which child is your favorite, as we will see in a moment, doesn't go well for the family. So this is where in verse 29 is where we see the first time that the brothers don't get along. So first of all, when they're born, twins, Jacob is holding the heel of his brother Esau, who's born first. And then comes this story. So once when Jacob was cooking a stew, Esau came in from the field and he was famished. Esau said to Jacob, "Let me eat some of that red stuff, for I am famished." Therefore he was called Edom. Jacob said, "First, sell me your birthright." Esau said, "I'm about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me?" Jacob said, "Swear to me first." So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went on his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. It's kind of in some ways a silly story to me. Why would you sell your birthright to your brother just over stew. But a little context is important here too. So the birthright in the Old Testament was for the eldest son. So even though Esau was just moments older, he was older. And the birthright meant that upon their father Isaac's death, that Esau would get the bulk, almost everything, all of the inheritance really. Nowadays often parents divide it equally among their children, but that's not how it happened in that day. So this was a big deal for Esau to sell his birthright to his brother Jacob. So we kind of see that Esau's a little impulsive. Again, I'm not a super impulsive person, so it's kind of something I don't fully understand, but maybe you know people like this in your life that are a little impulsive and might have sold their birthright for something like a stew when they were hungry. So then we continue on with Esau and Jacob. We can kind of see some sibling rivalry. And then in chapter 27, Isaac wants to bless his son Esau. So it's well known in the family that Esau has sold his birthright to Jacob. But Isaac is growing on in years. We're told that his eyes were dim and he couldn't see, so he called to his older son Esau and said, "See, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now go, take your weapon, go out in the field, and hunt game for me, and then prepare for me a savory food, just like I like. Bring it for me to eat, that I may bless you before I die." Now, Rebekah, Isaac's wife, heard this, but she wanted her son Jacob, her other son Jacob, to get the blessing. The birthright had already been sold, so the blessing. So she goes to Jacob and says, "Hey, go get for me 2 goats so that I can prepare the savory meal for you that your father wants your brother to get, and then you can give it to him and you'll get the blessing. I want you to get the blessing." Now, Jacob's a little concerned. Remember when we're told when they're born that Esau is the hairy one, Jacob's not hairy. He's like, isn't he going to know? And she says, "Don't worry about if there's a curse, it will be on me. Just follow my lead." So he goes out and kills the goats and then brings them back, and his mom Rebecca makes the savory meal. So Jacob goes and takes this. But he's worried about the hairiness, so she actually dresses him in an animal skin and puts extra hair so that hopefully they can trick Isaac. So he goes to his father and says, Here I am. Who are you, my son?" And Jacob lies to his father and says, "I am Esau, your firstborn." And Isaac's a little concerned. "Wait, how did you get this so quickly?" And he said, "Well, I just had great success." And then he was kind of so confused. He was like, "Well, it sounds like my son Jacob, but he went to touch his son, but you feel like Esau." So again, he said, "Are you really my son Esau?" And again, he lied to his father and said, "I am." And so he received this beautiful blessing. Well, of course, his brother comes back, right? He was the one originally sent out to go get the choice meat and make the savory meal. So as Isaac is finishing this delicious meal, his son Esau brings him a meal. And so again, Isaac is like, "Wait, who was just here?" So Esau realizes that for a second time he has been tricked by his brother Jacob, and he does not receive a blessing. He receives a short blessing, but not the full blessing that Isaac wanted to give his son Esau. So then in verse 41 of chapter 27 in Genesis, we're told, "Now Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, 'The days of mourning for my father are approaching. Then I will kill my brother Jacob.' But the words of her elder son Esau were told to Rebekah. So she went and called her younger son Jacob and said to him, 'Your brother Esau is consoling himself by planning to kill you. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice. Flee at once to my brother Laban in Haran, and stay with him for a while, until your brother's fury turns away, until your brother's anger against you turns away, and he forgets what you have done to him. Then I will send and bring you back from there. Why shall I lose both of you in one day?'" So we see again that Jacob and Esau are not getting along. Esau is so mad that he threatens to kill his own brother. So Jacob flees. Jacob flees and goes to his uncle Laban's place far away. There he actually falls in love with a cousin. Again, whole different time period, not recommended, not lawful today. But he does. So he marries actually two of his cousins because he first falls in love with Rachel, but Laban tricks him into first marrying Leah. So he marries Leah and then Rachel, and then serves his father-in-law for many decades. And so it comes time when Jacob's like, well, I'm ready to leave. I am ready to leave. So he asks Laban for permission to leave and for part of the flock. He has been helping to care for this flock of goats. And so Laban says, okay, you can have the spotted and the speckled ones. And then in the middle of the night, Laban goes out and takes all the spotted and speckled ones and hides them. So Jacob can take none. But Jacob gets wise, and so he figures out a way that the new goats will have the spots and speckled. So in time, the lambs, actually we're told lambs, are, he's able to take the ones that he rightfully should, and then he flees because he knows Laban tried to trick him. And so he fled, and then Laban tries to overtake Jacob, and thankfully they make a covenant. So Jacob is fleeing a lot in the Old Testament. So as he's fleeing from his father-in-law / uncle Laban, he realizes he's probably getting close to where his brother Esau is. Remember, their last interaction was essentially Esau threatening to kill Jacob. So Jacob is obviously quite worried. In fact, he has messengers sent, and he finds out that Esau has 400 men with him. He's coming to meet his brother Jacob, and has 400 men with him. So Jacob increases in anxiety. And so he decides to send gifts, to have gifts for his brother. So he has a present. Again, a whole different time period. I would not know what to do with these presents, but there were 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 lambs, 20 rams, 30 camels, 40 cow, 10 bulls, 20 donkeys, female donkeys, and 10 male donkeys. And he actually had his servants be the first ones, and his family were the last. And so as they meet, it's a powerful reunion. And so hear now these words from Genesis chapter 33. Now Jacob looked up and saw Esau coming, and 400 men with him. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the two maids. He put the maids with their children in front, then Leah with her children, and Rachel and Joseph last of all. He himself went on ahead of them, bowing himself to the ground 7 times until he came near his brother. But Esau ran to meet him and embraced him, and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. When Esau looked up and saw the women and children, he said, "Who are these with you?" Jacob said, "The children whom God has graciously given your servant." Then the maids drew near, they and their children bowed down. Leah likewise and her children drew near and bowed down, and finally Joseph and Rachel drew near, and they bowed down. Esau said, "What do you mean by all this company that I met?" Jacob answered, "To find favor with my Lord." But Esau said, "I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." Jacob said, "No, please. If I find favor with you, then accept my present from my hand. For truly to see your face is like seeing the face of God, since you have received me with such favor. Please accept my gift that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have everything I want." So he urged him, and he took it. Then Esau said, "Let us journey on our way, and I will go alongside you." But Jacob said to him, "My Lord knows that the children are frail, and that the flocks and the herds which are nursing are a care to me. If they are overtaken in one day, all the flocks will die. Let my Lord pass on ahead of his servant, and I will lead on slowly, according to the pace of the cattle that are before me, and according to the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord in Seir." So Esau said, Let me leave you with some of the people who are with me." But he said, "Why should my Lord be so kind to me?" So we see a beautiful reunion. Again, Jacob is sure that his brother Esau wants to kill him, but instead we're told he runs to him. They embrace, they kiss, they hug, and it's a beautiful reunion and a beautiful time for these two brothers to be reconciled. So we see how Esau has forgiven his brother Jacob for tricking him twice out of what should have been his. So we see a beautiful time of forgiveness. And so we as a church have been looking at what does it mean for us to forgive? Because again, that's one of the hardest things that we are told that we have to do, is we have to forgive others. So we've been using this book called Forgive to Live, How Forgiveness Can Save Your Life. And so Dr. Tibbetts in one chapter talks about how forgiveness is a choice. So I want to read a little bit of this to you. So he says, to refuse to forgive is a choice just as clearly as your choice to forgive is. So which is the better choice for you? And it's important to ask yourself three crucial questions. The first, is the hurtful experience worth sacrificing my peace of mind? Second one is, how much space in my mind am I willing to set aside for this person I don't even like? And then third, am I sufficiently focused on my life goals so as not to allow this event to distract me from what is truly important to me? Then he goes on to say, if you are spending more time plotting how to get even rather than how to let go and move on, then you are not choosing to forgive. If you are spending more time examining the hurt rather than healing it, then you are choosing not to forgive. If you are spending more time trying to change the past rather than improve your future, then you are not choosing to forgive. And so today in worship, I gave people Post-it notes. And so I forgot to tell you to get a Post-it note, but maybe you have scrap paper near you, or just take a moment to think about in your head who it is that you might need to forgive. What is that story that you keep going over and over again in your mind? What is that what are you held captive to? What did someone do against you that has just gripped you? You keep finding yourself being in a place of anger and resentment. You can't even think of looking at that person, ever talking to that person again. Now, just a reminder, forgiveness does not mean that you ever have to talk to the person again. It's really about letting it go for you. It does not always mean reconciliation. In this story, of course, it did, but it's not always safe. It's not always possible to be reconciled. Forgiveness is more about releasing the power that has had over you, not forgiving, has had over you. So I invite you to really think and pray about, who are you called to forgive? Who is God telling you? You at least need to pray about forgiving. Again, forgiveness is a journey, so it doesn't mean that tonight you're just automatically going to forgive them and never think about it again. But it's just allowing it to be an option. So I invite you, if you have a Post-it note, to write that name down. You can write it in code. As I told them today in worship, if it's your spouse or someone who you live with, I'm available for counseling, because you need to not live in all that tension. And even if it's not the person you live with, I'm available for counseling always. But just think about, who do you need to forgive? And then put that Post-it note somewhere. Maybe it's in the deep dark corner, the back of your attic where you never go, but it's somewhere. And maybe you will eventually consider it more and allow it to be in a different place. Maybe you're close enough to forgiving that can be in your bathroom mirror or on your cell phone, or I often put notes on the back of my cell phone so I don't forget things, or in your car, or somewhere where you're going to see it more regularly, so you can regularly be praying about, how can I forgive this person? How can I forgive this person? How can I reframe this story? As we saw that Esau must have done, because he forgave his brother Jacob. Remember, he lost all of his inheritance. He lost his blessing from his brother Jacob, and he's able to let it go. So I just invite you to pray about, who do you need to forgive? Or maybe it's a group you have to forgive. And as we, as a nation, have been affected by 2 recent shootings in the last 24 hours, mass shootings, I pray for those people who are affected that one day they can forgive. Again, it doesn't mean that those actions were ever okay, but allowing that to not have such a grip. Of course it's going to right now, but how do we allow those stories to not have such power over us? How are we freed to live? As the book says, how forgiveness can save your life, how we are free to forgive. So I'm praying for all of you this week. I hope everyone has a wonderful week, and praying for all of us as we seek to forgive others so that we may be forgiven by our God. So, all right, guys, talk to you guys later. See ya. Bye.